I spent the majority of my 20s drinking alcohol, drinking like a fish, really. You know, I believed that I was a social drinker. I believed that in order for me to relax, I needed to settle down and I needed to be able to have a beer after work because, you know, that's what grown-ups do. You know, at least that's how I perceived it when I was a kid, is when you get older, when you become an adult and you become of age to be able to consume alcohol, then what all adults do is they get off of work, they get home, they crack open a beer, and then they sit down and they relax with a beer or a glass of wine, or, you know, maybe some scotch on the rocks or some Yukon Jack on the rocks. But we've seen this from our parents, and it seems like this is a tradition that's been passed down from generation to generation. It wasn't something that a lot of our parents, or I should say most of us, it wasn't something that our parents literally taught us. It was just an observation, and it ultimately became our perspective of that's what normal adults do. So naturally, when we turn 21 and we're able to consume alcohol, you know, the gloves are off. The gloves are off, and we're able to go drink alcohol, and the adult thing to do is to go get some beers and relax, right? Relax after we get off of work. Welcome back to another episode of Sweat Talk. My name is Chad. So the majority of my 20s, I drink like a fish. You know, I drank to excess a lot, all the way up until probably my mid-30s. And you know, the first thing that I realized was I was self-medicating. You know, and like, I didn't go out and get shit-faced every night. It wasn't like that. I'm not an alcoholic. Never was an alcoholic. But what I learned was all I was doing was self-medicating. You know, in a lot of people's situation, that may not be the case. But in my situation, it 100% was. I had mental demons that I was battling on a daily basis. And in order to deal with those demons, the only solution that I ever was able to come up with in order to escape my reality and feel better was to consume alcohol. Now, I've never been a drug user. My personality, I've always been extremely self-aware as far as how my personality would react with many things, and that goes along with drugs. I've always been terrified of drugs. But growing up, alcohol was an acceptable thing to do. Drinking was an acceptable thing to do in my household as a child and even as a young adult. In fact, as a young adult, it was encouraged. So in my early 20s, I turned 21 and I damn near went straight to the military. I turned 21 in March, and in April, I went in the military. The following April, after I turned 21. So I had about 1 month of being 21 years old, and while I was in the military, I suffered from some severe trauma, and you know, it kind of goes par for the course for most people's enlistment, or I shouldn't say most people, but for a lot of people's enlistments. I was not an officer, I was enlisted. And while I was in, I tried to seek help from mental professionals, and every time I did, I was turned away. And oftentimes after I was turned away, I actually left the clinician's office, if that's what you want to call them, in worse shape than I was when I actually showed up to initially ask for help. I knew something was wrong. I knew something wasn't right, and I did my damnedest to reach out for help, and I never got any help. Instead, I got a wrongful diagnosis and treated like absolute shit. And unfortunately, that happens all too common in the military world. That happens to way too many service members and way too many veterans. They're treated like absolute dog shit. So then they end up going and drinking, right? You know, I'm 21 years old. I'm suffering from a debilitating mental illness at the time, and a lifelong debilitating mental illness that I can't get help for. And the feeling that I was left with from those mental health professionals or mental health providers. Hello. So the feeling that I was left with from those mental health professionals or those mental health providers was a feeling of worthlessness. It was a feeling of being unfixable, because those mental health professionals, not only did they discredit me, one of them even literally called me a liar to my face and said that my symptoms aren't anywhere near as severe as what I'm saying. I even have the medical documentation to write it. She didn't write it in so many words, but she told me to my face I'm a fucking liar and my symptoms are not that severe. So if you're suffering from a debilitating mental illness or condition at that time, and you go to a mental health provider and you ask them for help, and that's the outcome that you're left with, what are you going to do from there? The only thing you know to do, and that's to go medicate yourself with drugs or alcohol. It's the only thing that you can do that's going to make you feel good at the time, right? You know, you're trying to escape your reality. You're trying to escape the pain and the nonstop nightmare that you're living that's stuck inside of your mind. So for years, I avoided mental health professionals. I avoided them like the plague because they were worthless. All they're going to do is steal my money, and they're going to do absolutely nothing for me. They're going to send me into a pill mill, possibly, if even that. Or they're going to tell me that I'm not fixable and to go fuck myself. So the only solution that I could come up with was the bottom of a bottle. So for about the next 15 years, that's what I did. I explored the bottom of a bottle to escape my reality of the pain that I was living inside of my own head from the nightmares that were caused while I was during my military enlistment. Now, fortunately, not everybody experiences that. Fortunately, a lot of people actually are able to get some sort of mental help while they're in the military. And allegedly, the VA has some of the best healthcare that you can possibly have if you're actually able to get them to help you. And I've spent the last 20 years trying to get them to help me. And so far, still to this day, I don't have anything, even though I'm continuing to fight just about every day for the help that I signed up for. But I realized, you know, after about 15 years of consuming quite a bit of alcohol, I was sober for a couple of years and it just didn't feel right. Something was off. I would drink on occasion, but when I would drink, a lot of times I would take it to extremes. So one of my brothers, he came down from Florida. We all met when, you know, we lived in Yuma, Arizona. We were going to have a family reunion in San Diego. So another one of my brothers came up from Phoenix, and my brother from Florida, he brought a Cornelius keg of a home-brewed Hefeweizen, and we drank that entire Cornelius keg one night, and I probably put down half of it myself. That was the last time that I drank alcohol, and I was about 36 years old, and I was sick for months. I mean, I was sick, hardcore alcohol poisoning. And what's even crazier is that's not the first time that I drank that much in my lifetime, you know, over the course of my adulthood. But, you know, seeing my brothers and drinking beer, man, it just felt the right thing to do. It felt great. But something in my head clicked after that night, and in the sound or the thought of alcohol, it just never appealed to me again. In fact, for many years, the thought of alcohol made my stomach turn. And I just decided I'm done drinking. But over the course of being sober, for as long as I have, for the last 10 years, it's really come true over the course of probably 8 years. So I would say over the course of the last 2 years, it's really come to light just how bad I was self-medicating, how bad I was suffering, and how bad my mental acuity, my thoughts, my cognition, how bad it was affected by consuming alcohol. And when I look back, it just having 2-3 beers, that stuff had a measurable impact on the clarity of my thinking. So something else that I've learned also is your friends aren't who you think they are, and you're not who you think you are. So what I mean by that, when you stop drinking, the drinking buddies that you go out with, the people that you go hang out with while you're drinking, they like the you that they get when you're drunk. And when you hang out with them and you're not drunk, you're not as fun because you're not doing ridiculous shit that eventually will lead you to regret. Because believe me, I have done some stupid shit when I was drunk. And I know each and every one of you guys has too, if you consume alcohol, if you drink, especially if you drink to inebriation. But then when you do something that you're going to regret, then you have to live with that for, it creates this perpetual cycle that you almost don't seem to be able to escape from unless you find it at the bottom of the bottle. Because you do something stupid when you're drunk, then next thing you know, your friend shows up and they start laughing at what you did when you're drunk, then you have regret. So then the only way to get away from that regret and that reality is to go get drunk. So then you go do something stupid again. Your friends start making fun of you and talking shit because you used something stupid that you did when you were drunk. So then you have regret. You feel like an idiot. Then cycle just continues and repeat. And your friends find it entertaining. right? Your friends are entertained by your antics and your drunk behavior. And then when you don't want to drink, even though you're willing to go hang out, then you're not as fun, so they don't want you around. When you quit drinking, I'm sure quitting drugs is the same thing, but when you stop doing these, number one, your friends are going to change, because you're not going to like the friends once you see them from a sober light when they're out there getting shit-faced. And then your friends aren't going to like what they see when you're sober and they're shit-faced. Unless maybe you are the designated driver, then they might tolerate you, because then they can get home without worry of a DUI or leaving their car somewhere. But even that, even being the designated driver myself many times, you still get left outside of the friend group. Eventually, they just grow away. And I say grow away because when you're sober and that becomes a priority, then you are going to grow, and you are going to become a different person. You are going to become a more centered, a more conscious-minded person. You are going to be able to think more clearly. You will act more clearly. You will be more effective in your decision-making, and you will not be colluding or clouding your judgment anymore. But then something else that I learned is you have to learn how to be social again. And this is for any occasion, right? This doesn't just mean hanging out with those friends. This means going out anywhere into large groups. There is an acclimation and adjustment period that you have to learn how to deal with when you get out into larger groups. So Robin and I, one of our favorite things to do is to go to concerts. Like I said, I don't drink and I don't do drugs. So when I go to these concerts, I'm stone cold sober. So one of the things that I also suffer from is social anxiety, right? I do not do well around large groups of people. It is sometimes it's almost crippling. And going to these concerts or getting ready to go to the concerts, it is so hard. It is so difficult to leave my house and go into these large groups, especially sober. And that was one of the reasons why I drank, was because I was able to relax, right? I'm sure many of you can relate. You want to take the edge off. You want to be able to relax in that social setting or in that social environment, even if it's only a couple beers with a buzz. You have become dependent on that substance being what relaxes you and what calms you and what calms your mind, because you're able to escape the fear and the reality through consumption of alcohol. So learning how to put myself into large social situations, it has been one of the larger challenges that I have found. I love going into concerts. It's always been one of my favorite things to do. I love going and seeing my favorite bands, or I mean, hell, just not even my favorite bands I've never even heard of sometimes. I love going to concerts. I love music. I love live music. And I love to be able to see the passion of the person singing and the band playing their music, and the entire environment to me with the type of music that I listen to, which is mostly reggae. It is an amazing experience every time. And when we go to concerts, then typically we will get VIP tickets. That is our hobby. That is what we do. So that is where we spend our money. But when we go to concerts, we're not going to these gigantic festivals. We're not going and dropping, $5,000, $10,000 on a ticket. I don't like big artists. We like small musicians in intimate environments, intimate atmospheres and clubs. We don't go to festivals. We don't go into any of that stuff. It's not really our jam. I mean, every now and then we will, but it better be one hell of a lineup. So you have to learn how to reintroduce yourself into social settings. Because when you take away that social lubricant, and that you get to actually feel and harness that social anxiety that you've been smoothing over with that social lubricant, with that cold snack or whatever you want to call it, the frothy sandwich. Everything about your environment and everything about your experience changes. But one of the coolest parts about that is you actually get to embrace it and enjoy it. So like I said, over the past 20 years, I've been fighting with the VA, the Veterans Administration, actually the Veterans Benefits Administration. And I've been doing it by myself. I have been fighting this war alone. There is one gentleman that has been helping me, and he's amazing. His name is Sharma. He is a board-certified psychiatrist through Johns Hopkins Hospital. Incredibly smart dude. He has a YouTube channel. The YouTube channel's name is Concise Psych. I highly recommend going and check him out. Most of his aim for his business and his content is towards veterans, but he is gearing into other mental health issues. And if there's a topic that you want him to talk about with his expertise, then he loves to hear your feedback. He loves to help other people. Let me preface this that I have worked with him in the past, and that's how I know he's an amazing dude. But he is not paying me. He's not paying me anything. I get nothing for mentioning his name. I want to mention him because he's an amazing dude, and he's there to help people. He's legitimately there to help people. He's legitimately a great dude and a great doctor. You know, when I was in the military, they labeled me as an alcoholic because I got in trouble many times for alcohol-related incidents. And the whole time I was never an alcoholic. And like I said, there is no doubt in my mind, being able to look back with a clear, concise operating mind, that I'm not an alcoholic, and I was just simply self-medicating. And I believe that that's what the majority of society does with alcohol as well, is they are self-medicating, getting that social lubricant in their system so that they can forget about the problems and just kind of try to relax. But if you need that beer at the end of the workday to relax, then that means that you are depending on that alcohol. Now, that's not saying that you're an alcoholic, but that's saying that you are depending on alcohol to feel better. And if that's the case, then maybe, just maybe, you should reevaluate that situation. Because without clarity of mind and without actually being sober for some length of time and putting alcohol away, just because it's killing your brain, like it destroys you in more ways than you can possibly imagine. Now, I understand we all have our vices. I have my vices. I know you have your vices. Maybe alcohol is one of your vices. But for me, my worst vices is alcohol and sugar. Those are the two worst things that I can consume for my mental health. And I know there are millions of people out there that are the exact same way. You know, you're more of a sugar addict. And that's one of the reasons why the alcohol is something that you might be dependent on. It's something that makes you feel better because you're addicted to sugar, and the way that the alcohol is processed inside of your liver mimics the sugar. There's a million different reasons why alcohol might make you feel better. But either way, know and understand if you are dependent on alcohol and or sugar. You know, I can't make that decision. I'm not the one to say whether you have a problem or not. That's not what I'm trying to say here. That's not what I'm trying to do. I just want to point out a couple of things that I have noticed since I've been sober over the course of the last 10 years. My mental clarity is on point. The way that my brain works, I have never experienced in my life. And that has come with no alcohol and no sugar. Those are the largest things that I've changed in my life to find the mental clarity that I'm experiencing at this time in my life. I figured out who my friends are. I figured out who I am. I figured out what my fears are. Let's face it, when you're drunk, you don't have fears. You don't give a shit. You don't think about the consequences of your actions, right? You think that maybe you can go drive your car better and faster because you feel more in tune or you feel more in touch. Meanwhile, your judgment is completely clouded. And then the long-term effects that you have, I read a study somewhere that said something along the lines of one beer will damage your mental cognition for like 5 days after consuming one beer. Just one. Look it up. I could be off just a little bit. Okay. They were extremely eye-opening results. And it's something that I know I never considered. I know I never thought about it. But I can tell you firsthand that I've experienced it. And quitting alcohol has literally changed my life for the better. So then think about the financial aspect of it. You know, you go to the bar. Say you go to the bar twice in a week. I don't think you can get out of the bar for $100 anymore. And you may not even realize it. You just sign off on the dotted line and tip the waitress or the bartender and move on. So if you spend $100 each time you go to the bar, that's $200 a week. If you go to the bar twice a week. So then think about every time you stop for a 6-pack of beer. If you drink the foo-foo beer like I did, the microbrews, then you're going to end up spending $10 to $15 on a 6-pack. Do that 3-4 times a week. I mean, you're still going to be at $45 a week. If you did it 3 times a week, 3 6-packs a week, that's $45 a week. Now multiply that by 52 for 52 weeks in a year, and you're north of $1,000. You're a couple $1,000s on the low end. But what ends up happening is you spend that money so slowly over such a short course of over such a long period of time that you don't realize the compounding effects that has in the long term. I mean, if you were able to take that same, say you end up spending $3,000 a year on beer, which it sounds like a lot. It sounds like it sounds crazy, but most people spend more money than that on beer each year, way more. But if you were to take that same $3,000 or $3,500 and put it into a Roth IRA, if you're a single person, you just maxed out your Roth IRA for the year, and by the time you're eligible for retirement, that is literally multiple millions of dollars thrown straight in the shitter. But ultimately, I would say the biggest thing that I learned from being sober was, you know, when I finally realized that I didn't need alcohol anymore, that I was just gonna stop drinking, like, you know, why? And that's exactly what it was. When I decided I wasn't gonna drink anymore, I thought, why? Like, why do I drink? It does nothing good for me. I love the taste of it. It tastes amazing. It makes me feel great. But the repercussions and the true cost of it are far greater than the rewards or the benefits that I get. I mean, alcohol destroys people's lives all the time. All the fucking time. But yet somehow it's still socially acceptable to do that. And you know, when we're young and we see our friend that's just getting completely shithoused, he's stumbling all over himself, he's pissing himself, he's puking on himself. You know, we think it's funny when we're young. That shit is not fucking funny. It's terrible. It's absolutely terrible, because we don't think about the consequences of it, and we just accept it as normal. We accept that that's how things are going to be. We accept that that's how life is. But I mean, if you really think about it, like, what does alcohol do for you? I can't think of a single positive thing that alcohol has ever done for me. Not one. It hasn't ever, it has never helped me find, it didn't help me find my wife. It didn't help me find the job that I have. It didn't help me financially. It didn't legitimately help my social anxiety. The long term, it didn't help me mentally. There's no actual benefit to drinking alcohol that I have found. None. I hope that your eyes have been opened. I hope that you are able to see that there is no legitimate reason to drink, and you don't need alcohol in your life. None of us do. We don't need alcohol in our life. But the question is, so are you able to not drink? Are you able to put that bottle down? Are you able to just swear alcohol off for tomorrow? Are you able to do that? And then how about the day after that? What about the day after that? Can you just not drink for another day? So if you made it this far, do me a favor and go down in the comments section and write that word sober. Just that one word, sober. You know, there is nothing that alcohol is going to do for you in a positive way. I just want to point out that there is absolutely nothing you can't do sober that you can do when you're drinking. Nothing. And sometimes we think that we need to have that alcohol in order for us to be able to do something. And that's complete horse shit. That is us making up excuses of why we need to go drinking. That is us making up excuses of why something was okay or justified. That is us lying to ourselves, which in turn is going to lower our self-esteem and also cause us to want to go drink more. We need to get rid of that thought process that we have, and that stupid stinking thinking that we have, that we believe that some reason we need that fucking booze. So I asked for these short comments because they do a couple of things. Number one, they help us reprogram our subconscious minds, because when we see something and experience it over and over and over, it's going to help us reprogram our minds in a positive way. Because if you think about it, if you're drinking, if you have problems and you're drinking away your problems, or if you're having difficulties with a situation and you drink away those difficulties for that social lubricant or to escape whatever, then all you are is drunk with the exact same problems and still needing that social lubricant, which achieves absolutely nothing for you. So I want to thank you guys for those super thanks. I want to thank you guys for showing up. I hope you guys are showing up for yourselves. And I hope each and every one of you has a wonderful day. Peace.